this is the home that I grew up in that pretty much was the inspiration for me creating the Scarlet Knight Defender of the Block. I was raised here with my grandparents and my mom. I'm the son of a teenage mother. I was the son of a teenage mother, so a lot of times what ends up happening is you end up living with your grandparents on and off, and because your mom is trying to work, they're trying to make sure that you're taken care of. So one thing old people do is just watch TV, and that's when I developed my love for animation. That's when I developed my love for film, and I was just always known as the weird dude in the crew. That's how my homies knew me. I was always into sci-fi and horror and superhero stuff, and I would just tell them about certain things, but they would just always say I was the weird homie. That was my title. But living here, as you know, Big Mama's house was always like the hub. That was like where we did everything. That's where we had dinners, cookouts. That's where, I mean, everything happened at this house. That's when my friends came. That's when my friends of friends came. I mean, family, everybody in this neighborhood knew my grandparents. Now, one thing about my grandparents, they never met a stranger. My grandmother retired rather early before my grandfather, so she would just always sit on that porch. And people would just come from the highway, because they gentrified the area, so people would come through the highway and try to walk around. They'd be thirsty because they walking through a big park after walking quite a ways. So my grandma never met anybody that she thought was a stranger. Like, she would feed them, she would give them water if they wanted to, conversation. So it was nobody in this neighborhood that felt like they couldn't come down here. And there was a lot of people who actually lived with us. And I say us because I lived with them the majority of my life. I stayed in the attic room for the majority of my life, all the way until when I graduated from school. But I had cousins who stayed here. I had friends of cousins and friends of family members who stayed here. I've had exes who stayed here. They never had anybody in their lives that they felt like they couldn't take care of. And I didn't understand that when I was younger, but I understand it now. I understand the whole village. It takes a village concept now. When it came to my grandparents, people were, you know, probably curious, like, where are they now? So about 4 years ago, my grandfather passed, and the year before him, my grandmother passed away. My grandfather taught me everything. Taught me everything. Anything that a young man could know, even as a grown man, if I called him and asked him, he was there to answer it. He was there to make sure that I was standing tall. And no matter what, I always looked at him as my guardian. So even when he was older and I was older and I was a grown man with my own child, even when he told me to stand to attention, I stood to attention, because that's the type of power that he had over our family. He was a real man, a true leader. I mean, you name it, he was him. He was that was him. So from there, we lost the house. We didn't have nothing else there, and that's when I just started writing the book. And then I put my grandmother and my grandfather's likeness in the comic book. I named the comic book after my childhood home, 2923 Comics, where I was raised. I slept in an attic room. If you look on my logo, you can see it's the shape of an attic, because that's where I slept, and that's where I thought about all these crazy ideas. That's where I watched all these shows and these films that I fell in love with. And I want to be that same thing for other children who may not be as so lucky to have a Cecil in their lives, or to have a Mary in their lives, or to have other men in their community that have taken them on, and they can use this book. And also the other comic book community, they haven't seen this type of work. They